The views expressed on this podcast of the Election Day for the School of Global Journalism are not those of underwriters, students, the staff, or management of Morgan State University.
Hi, my name is Samaya Holiday, and welcome to the Uncensored Podcast with Charles Robinson. Here are our latest headlines. Voters are in the process of casting their ballots. Polls close at 7 p.m. Eastern in Virginia. In New Jersey, they close at 8 p.m. Eastern. In New York, they close at 9 p.m. Eastern. In California, they close at 8 p.m. Pacific. Philanthropist Mackenzie Scott has donated $80 million to Howard University. We are on day 35 of the government shutdown. 900,000 employees have been furloughed. Take two. A federal judge has ordered the Trump administration to pay SNAP benefits, but they will be half the normal payment and delayed. Now, back to the Uncensored Podcast with Charles Robinson.
Hi, I'm Charles Robinson, and welcome to the Uncensored Podcast. Tonight, we're going to look at the elections of 2025. We're going to take you around the country to check in with people to see what they're seeing on the ground and the results that are coming in. In addition to that, you'll get some very uncensored commentary from some of my friends across the country. This broadcast is being put on by my class here at Morgan State University. So you'll see some young people who are trying to do this business, and let's hope we can get them a job. So, first up, let's find out a little bit more about what's going on with one of my students, Braden Chambers.
Hi, I'm Braden Chambers, a student here at Morgan State University. Today we're here with Dr. Jason Johnson, a professor here at Morgan and a contributor to MSNBC. Now to start off with, what will you be looking for in this year's election?
Depends on what part of the country we're talking about, Braden. So in Virginia, I think it's pretty clear that the Democratic candidate's probably going to win the governor's race. The only place that's really in question is whether or not the attorney general will flip. New Jersey seems to be a toss-up for governor, but there are actually mayor's races in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and Seattle, and Pittsburgh, and Minneapolis, and St. Paul, and Miami. There are mayor's races around the country that I'm sort of paying attention to because I think the issues on the ground with everything from SNAP to the government shutdown to ICE raids are going to play a big role in how people turn out to vote.
Now, do you think turnout will affect this year's election?
I'm going to answer this question like a professor. Of course it will. That's not a good question. Every election is affected by turnout. That's like asking someone, do you think the score is going to make a difference in the Super Bowl? Of course it will. The score always matters. So, a better way to put that would be to say, do you think we're going to see higher or lower turnout? And how can that affect individual races? In which case, then I can give you a more detailed answer. So I can say things like in the city of New York, you have Zoran Mandani running against not Chris Cuomo, against Andrew Cuomo, okay, for mayor. The last three mayoral elections in New York City have had like 23, 25, and 25% turnout. So only 23 to 25% of the 14 million people in New York City who are eligible to vote actually bother to turn out to vote. If Mamdani wins and the turnout is, say, 30, that would be a massive sea change and an indicator that people's enthusiasm brought out large numbers of voters who haven't been heard of before or had never bothered to vote, certainly not in a mayor's election prior to this year.
Thanks, Braden. One of the things that we're going to be watching is what's going on in and around the country. One of those who weighed in is the faculty editor of The Spokesman, none other than Milton Kent.
Hi, my name is Keontae Jenkins. I am here at Morgan State University in Baltimore, Maryland. I'm with Professor Milton Kent, advisor here at the Spokesman. So, Professor Milton Kent, What is your thought about this election?
Well, Chianti, I think there are three important things to look for, or three important places to look for in this election. I think first is, well, I'll combine two of them. The governor's races in Virginia and New Jersey. I think that will give us an indication of how much um, antipathy there is towards President Trump. Usually, in what we call off-year elections, the first year after a new president takes over, the other party in those two states usually wins. So I think that's something, we'll get a measure of just how much people are against President Trump. I think the third thing to watch for is Proposition 50 in California, which is where basically the Democratic Party there has um, requested that the state redistrict its congressional seats so that basically in an attempt to try to get more Democratic seats in the House of Representatives.
And what do you think? What do you think the outcome of the election will be?
Well, my guess is if I just had to go by what I'm hearing, I think the Democrats will do well in all three places. I would expect that the the Democratic nominees in New Jersey and Virginia will win there. And I do think that Proposition 50 will succeed in California, which will really place Trump behind the eight ball, so to speak.
Okay, thank you, Professor Kent.
We're very fortunate to have a number of professors here at Morgan that have had vast experience in reporting on elections. One of those is Pulitzer Prize winning Professor E.R. Shipp. She has been watching New York City. This is probably one of the most unusual races because who knew that the president would weigh in on a local election? So let's take a listen.
ER, tell me what you're watching in New York in the mayoral race.
Well, I'm really interested in how this is going to turn out in the mayor's race because the Democratic Party is not behind the candidate who's leading in the polls. And there are a lot of questions being raised about whether the party is so out of step that it can't see when it has kind of a savior in the making for the party.
A lot of people are concerned about the president of the United States weighing in on this race. Does this concern you?
Yes, as much as this president weighing in on everything. He's weighing in on everything from school curriculum to traffic patterns in New York City to what's culturally acceptable, taking over Kennedy Center. So he's trying to take over all aspects of our lives. And his weighing in on who the mayor of New York City is in the same vein, and in the same vein is very troubling.
What things will you watch? Turnout has been relatively high so far. Will you be watching that?
I'll be looking at that, and I'll also be looking to see something I'm personally interested in is how deep his reach has been into that older Black community that votes consistently. He has a lot of support among the younger folks, and this younger and older stuff is always kind of funny to me because I think I'm technically in the older category, but I feel like I identify with the younger. In any case, that some people I know in New York City were a little tepid earlier on. So it'll be interesting to see whether the young vote turns out and how much depth of support he has among that older generation of Black people.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Uncensored Podcast here at Morgan State University's School of Global Journalism. I'm your host, Charles Robinson. One of the things that we want to let you know that there is going to be a lot of breaking news. So stand by for all of that. During the course of this evening, we will bring you some live guests and their insights, and we will try to get it all to you. Be advised that this first hour will be repeated starting at 7 p.m., and then we will be live. If you want to follow us online, you can do so with the hashtag SGJC Elections 25. Let me repeat that. That's SGJC Elections 25 for the hashtag. If you want to contact me directly, you can use my Twitter handle at C3 Newsman. That's just one word. That's at C3 Newsman. On Instagram at Charles Robinson 841. That's all lowercase. Let me say that again. That's Charles Robinson 841, all lowercase. Now, let's hear from a student on what races they are watching.
It's definitely really important. Since the shutdown's going on, been a lot of fear going on about who is in control and who is just having all these issues. I really like, when it comes to New York, I really like Mamdani. I feel like he is a good candidate. He actually holds people accountable. He's open about like taxing the rich and millionaires and stuff like that. I'm not really a fan of Cuomo and so because of just how they act, especially Cuomo. I feel like he's kind of just fake to me. He's not really genuine. But these are definitely some important races, especially the ones in Virginia too. Just everything is so important right now in this state of the country.
The views expressed on this podcast of the Election Day for the School of Global Journalism are not those of underwriters, students, the staff, or management of Morgan State University.
Thank you a whole lot. First of all, I just want to let you know that during this broadcast, we're going to hear from a lot of different kinds of people. One of the people I want you to hear from is a pollster. Her name is Malia Cromer. She's at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. And during that process, what you're going to hear from is why women are so important in this race.
A number of women have decided to take up the mantle. What do you think is kind of motivating them to think that this is the time to do it?
So we have two really interesting governor's races going on in this offshore election, and we're going to find out tomorrow when this airs what the makeup of female governors across the country will eventually look like. That has been one of the areas where women, statewide executive, have not, have been slow to build up and to get sort of representation. Whereas at the state legislative level, you see a lot of women over the past decade. We have now a legislative body, New Jersey, where there is a majority of lawmakers are women, around 69% of the New Jersey legislature. But then again, in Wyoming, about 25% of their legislative body is made up of women. So again, these two kind of key races in Virginia and New Jersey, I think really demonstrate that women are finally starting to crack into the executive role. And we all know the reason that is so important is because if you want to break the highest and hardest glass ceiling, jumping off as a governor is a great way to do it, if history teaches us anything.
I note that, as long as I've been covering politics, money has always been a problem, but it looks like they are kind of meeting the moment, if you will.
Right. And so there has that fundraising gap has always been has at least historically been a problem for female candidates. But right now, I think at least not just this cycle, but we have seen the tides are changing a little bit, and that female candidates can fundraise to the level of their sort of their male opponents. And that is really, really important because listen, people can have a lot of things to say about money in politics, but if you want to win elections, you have to raise money because you have to pay a staff. You have to pay to boost your name recognition, to get your policy ideas out there. So I know that people think money's a bad thing sometimes, but money is the necessary lifeblood of our electoral system. And women are doing much better regarding their fundraising capabilities.
Well, they say money is the mother's milk of politics. So I know you got a new poll out. Let's talk a little bit about some of the subject matters you tried to cover.
You bet. So, as much as I think the country is going to be turning their attention to New Jersey and Virginia, Maryland will have our gubernatorial election next year during the midterms. Right now, the incumbent governor, Wes Moore, he has, according to our poll released today, he has a 52% approval rating and 44% disapprove, which means he's above water right now with Marylanders. This number has been relatively stable over the last year. We've checked in on it two other times, back last October as well as in February. The only real difference we see with Wes Moore is that his disapproval numbers have ticked up slightly. So, 32% have disapproved of him last October. This October, it's up to 44%. And I think that it's if you look at the other sort of numbers on our new poll, it's the economy that is causing trouble, I think, for any elected official in the state, but particularly the governor. Economic conditions, if you ask people to rate them, an overwhelming majority rated as just poor or fair. Only about a third say it's good or excellent. That number has been consistent. People have held these sort of negative attitudes towards the state economy for a year now. And then when asked about these sort of like big things that are big concern for Marylanders, they care about healthcare. They care about the cost of utilities, specifically electricity. And they care about the cost of everyday goods and services. So anytime that you have this sort of economic, this sort of negative attitudes towards the economy, you're going to see a disapproval rating for the governor tick up. Because regardless if the governor he can't wave a magic wand and fix the economy, but when you are the leader of the state, you get the glory, but you also get the criticism.
Can we talk a little bit about members of the GOP who are trying to challenge him? Ed Hale, who was technically a Democrat, now says he's going to run as a Republican. And of course, Steve Hershey, who is the Senate leader, has also indicated that he may run. What are their challenges, if you will?
Fundraising is the number one challenge facing both of those candidates. Wes Moore is sitting on a massive campaign war chest. And not only that, he's a rising star with the Democratic Party nationally. There is no way the Democratic Governors Association are going to let a Republican in this state get close to him in this election cycle. So we're really sort of, I think, those of political observers, we're waiting to see what the former governor does. In Maryland, you are allowed to run again. You can't serve 3 consecutive terms, but you can, once you're out of office, you can run again. And so everybody seems to be sort of waiting on whether Larry Hogan throws his hat in the ring for governor. It goes kind of like back and forth every day. Right now, it seems like he's not going to run. But I think that we all remember what happened last election cycle when the very last day of the filing deadline, Larry Hogan came and decided to throw his hat in the ring. So for me, I think I'm going to wait on the Hogan speculation until February. But the issue that really Hogan won't face, although it will be difficult for him to fundraise as well, because I think he will certainly be back to underdog status, unlike in 2018 when he ran. Stephen Hershey, I think potentially has the ability to reach across some of the party aisle. He certainly, I don't think I would conceptualize him as the Trump wing of the Republican Party, whereas former Delegate Dan Cox, who ran against Moore last election cycle, certainly was. His issue is that he is a state senator from the Eastern Shore, and he needs to make sure that people from Montgomery County, Anne Arundel County, Baltimore City, all across the state know his name. And that takes money. It takes a lot of money to drive people's attention to you. And it's frankly, when you're an incumbent Democratic governor in a state that 55% of the voters are Democrats, that is a considerable advantage.
And what about Mr. Hale, who, ran one of the largest banks in this state? Does he have the juice to make it work?
He's a respected businessman, most certainly, without a question. But his issue is the same issue that's facing any Republican candidate who's not named Larry Hogan, is that people across the state just don't know who he is. And people won't cast a ballot for you, or you certainly can't get crossover votes unless people, specifically Democrats, know sort of exactly who you are and what you stand for. And for him, unless he is willing, I'm not sure how much like self-funding money he has, but it will be a big sort of uphill battle for him even to win the Republican primary, particularly because up until very recently, he was a Democrat.
Malia, you always ask some unusual questions. Is there anything unusual you asked in this poll?
It's not something unusual, but I think it's really exciting. So on Thursday, we're releasing our results about artificial intelligence. And so that is a big issue now, like not only just facing college professors and students turning in papers, but also just all aspects of American life. And so we asked Marylanders about various aspects of AI. That's coming on Thursday. It might not be unusual, but I think it's pretty exciting.
That's Malia Cromer. She's with the Institute of Politics at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. Malia, thank you. We look forward to many more of your polls and what they tell us about the electorate.
Thanks, Malia. One of the things we are monitoring are some issues that are going on as far as where there are monitors for various individuals who are from the Department of Justice who are monitoring voting. So let's begin in New Jersey, in Passaic County, which is the northern portion of the actual state of New Jersey, the Garden State. They have had a number of individuals who are on site checking IDs, if you will. Probably the biggest area where things are really heating up, if you will, is out in California. They tell us that Fresno County, this is coming from MSNBC, as well as Kern County and Los Angeles County, which includes Los Angeles City, as well as Riverside County and Orange County. The Trump administration has been keen to try to suppress voter turnout in Democratic areas. We are going to continue to monitor this because we believe that there may be challenges from the courts sometime tonight where they may ask the polls stay open longer or they may close some polls. But one thing's for certain, this is a very important election. We first of all want to thank you for listening to the Uncensored Podcast. I am your host, Charles Robinson, and for all of my students here at the Global School of Journalism, thank you.
The views expressed on this podcast of the Election Day for the School of Global Journalism are not those of underwriters, students, the staff, or management of Morgan State University.